Nikola Tesla's forbidden secret, the Great Pyramid, was a power plant. The chamber vibrated at 121 Hz and the granite started to sing. A low, throbbing tone pressed against my ribs while the sarcophagus hummed in sympathy. Then the meter in my hand spiked, an electric whisper where there shouldn't be any power at all. Get this, the stone felt alive. In that instant, curiosity turned into urgency. Why does a tomb feel like it's responding to you? That moment didn't come out of nowhere. Engineers have measured the king's chamber ringing like a tuned box, with quartz-rich granite responding to voice-level frequencies. Meanwhile, Tesla once built a tower to make the earth resonate. To understand why a room inside the Great Pyramid behaves like a machine, we need to go back into stone, into sound, into a forgotten blueprint. The anomaly inside the stone, resonance that shouldn't exist. Start with what we can measure. The king's chamber is a granite rectangle, about 10 by 5 by nearly 6 meters, built from Aswan granite heavy enough to crush anything beneath it. Yet when sound hits it at around 121 Hz, the room wakes up. Engineers like Tom Danley documented a primary Eigen mode right there, in the lower male voice range, the sarcophagus. It locks in between roughly 114 and 122 Hz, like it was tuned to the same note. That's not myth, that's instrumentation. Why does that matter? Because granite isn't just rock, it's a composite with a lot of quartz. And quartz is piezoelectric. Press it, bend it, vibrate it, you get charge separation. That's how lighters spark and watches keep time. Now in engineered devices, crystals are aligned to maximize the effect. Granite's crystals are mostly random, so skeptics say large-scale electricity from granite is unlikely. Fair. But scale and mass do something interesting. Even with randomness, big vibrational energy across tons of quartz can yield small but real electrical responses. It's not a battery, it's a transducer, mechanical in, electrical out. Here's where the anomaly tightens. The sarcophagus and chamber share a sweet spot. Human voice, chanting, drums, even infrasound from the dead-end passage measured near 5.13 Hz. These inputs don't just echo, they build standing waves. Granite ceiling beams resonate up around 300 Hz. Other models push certain modes down into infrasound. Meanwhile, researchers have reported a stable magnetic environment in the chamber, variations under 0.1%, thanks to the mix of diamagnetic granite and paramagnetic limestone. That kind of electromagnetic steadiness is rare in the wild. It's the quiet you want when tiny charges might matter. Now add a second layer. Physics simulations from modern labs modeled the pyramid interacting with long radio wavelengths, hundreds of meters, and found energy can focus in the internal chambers and beneath the base when driven at specific frequencies. That's a theoretical model, not proof of ancient usage. Still, it shows the geometry is acoustically special, only it's interesting under the right conditions. Geometry, material, and frequency conspire. What nobody knew at the time of construction, if this was intentional, was language like Eigen modes and piezoelectric coefficients. But they didn't need the terms to find the results. You can tune stone by building with millimeter precision. You can select granite with high quartz content from Aswan and stack it in a box that sings. You can cut a stone chest whose note sits inside the chamber's note. You don't have to say piezoelectricity if you're listening for the right hum, and if you feel the room answer your breath, you don't forget it. Meanwhile, centuries later, Nikola Tesla chased resonance from Colorado Springs to Long Island. His Wardenclyffe tower wasn't tall for nothing. It tried to couple energy into the earth with a 186-foot mast and a deep shaft under it, tied to iron pipes sunk radially outward. He aimed for ground conduction and atmospheric coupling, a world wireless system. He believed powerful impulses could drive standing waves through the planet, letting receivers ring at resonance and pull usable energy from the shared medium. His lab drew on big coils, high-frequency currents, and a massive ground connection. While that was happening in Shoreham, the Great Pyramid had been standing for 4.5 millennia with its own unusual pair, a vast tapered antenna of limestone above and a granite heart inside. One focuses mass and shape toward the sky, the other sits like a resonant core. Different eras, same obsession, make the earth and sky part of the circuit. But there's a problem you should hear. Granite's random quartz orientation means you won't get clean, efficient power out unless the input is strong and the structure cooperates. That's where resonance is everything. In a resonant cavity, small inputs can build large amplitudes. The chambers measured 121 Hz mode, the sarcophagus's matched band, the infrasound channels. All of it suggests a system designed to stack oscillations. The more those oscillations stress the quartz, the more charge you get across microdomains in the granite. Not a power grid, but a process. Impact immediate and human. People inside report the tone pressing on their chest, the air thickening, the sense that a whisper carries too far. Palms sweat, hearts sink to the beat without permission. Instruments show spikes. Chanting in the range energizes the space. If you're a priest, that's ritual potency. If you're an engineer, that's energy concentration. If you're Tesla, you're smiling. Unknown to visitors, the stone's mineral physics sets quiet traps. Every footstep adds microstress. Every vowel harbors harmonics that tickle beams overhead. The sarcophagus's lip shivers when a low drum hits. The room answers back as if the walls are a diaphragm. Energy isn't vanishing, it's pooling in wave patterns between faces of stone, in the grain of quartz, in an electromagnetic hush designed by material contrast, limestone screening, granite converting. 3 days earlier, someone had told me it's just acoustics. Then I saw the modeling papers showing energy focusing under specific radio wavelengths, and I remembered Tesla's claim that the Earth and atmosphere are conductors at high frequencies. I'm not saying the Egyptians built a radio node. I'm saying their geometry and materials would matter in either story, ritual or machine. The line between them is thinner than we think. This was the moment everything changed for me, connecting the measurable hum of a granite room to the dream of a tower that never worked as planned. Wardenclyffe had 300 feet of iron grounding in a 68-foot metallic dome. The Great Pyramid has a limestone mountain as a dielectric mass and a granite core with quartz-rich plates stacked over a tuned box. One had blueprints, the other has angles and stone, both bet on resonance. In the aftermath of that 121 Hz swell, you can't unhear the pattern. A chamber that behaves like a resonator. Materials that answer mechanical stress with charge. A structure that in models concentrates electromagnetic energy at certain frequencies. Nobody claiming a light bulb glowed there, but the ingredients for energy conversion are present, layered in stone. And once you admit that, the shafts and waterways start to look less like corridors and more like parts of a circuit. The Nile beneath, water as the hidden engine. To understand how stone could become a circuit, we need to listen below the sand. The Nile wasn't just scenery, it was a moving charge carrier, a seasonal piston. Now remember, this plateau once sat over a higher water table, fed by a river that rose and fell like a slow heartbeat. If you think that's just poetic, here's where it gets practical. Moving water through porous limestone creates pressure gradients, ion transport, and streaming potentials, electrokinetic effects that turn flow into charge separation. It's weak in a glass tube. It's not so weak when the tube is a hill of limestone the size of a small city. What nobody knew at the time, because the evidence is scattered in shafts and weathered channels, is that Egyptian builders engineered with water more than we admit. Recent archaeological work at the Step Pyramid points to hydraulic lifts and flood control features being used to raise blocks. That's a different site in a different century, but it proves a mindset. Harness water, modulate it, trap its force, then let it do work. Transfer that mindset to Giza and the question shifts from was there water to how was it guided? Here's a micro story. A worker lowers a jar down a narrow shaft near the plateau's base. He hears the echo of a void and the slap of water on stone. He measures with a rope, feels a tug, pulls up a wet line flecked with calcite. His stomach tightens at the sound of moving water under rock. He doesn't know electromigration from a hole in the ground, but he knows a flow when he hears it. That's the human detail the geology hints at. Channels, wells, and cavities that likely connected the monument to a living aquifer. Meanwhile, engineers look at limestone and see more than rock. They see a dielectric matrix saturated with ions. When water moves through it, friction at the mineral surfaces drags charge, producing a streaming current and an opposing electric field. The effect is modest per inch, but scale crushes modesty. Push seasonally pulsing water through kilometers of microchannels under a pyramid, and you've built a constant, low-frequency agitator beneath a resonant granite heart. But there was one problem. You need a way to couple that slow geophysical rhythm to the chamber's fast mechanical modes. Enter constrictions, drops, and cavities. Any hydraulic engineer knows you can turn laminar flow into pulses with the right geometry. Narrow a conduit, create turbulence, then let it expand into a void. The flow becomes a drummer. Now place your resonant box, the king's chamber, where the whole mass will feel those regular tugs. It's not that water powered the room like a turbine. It primed the system with a baseline oscillation, a tide that never stopped tapping. What nobody outside the machine shop understood in Tesla's day is that he tried to do something similar with air and ground. At Wardenclyffe, he sank a deep shaft and drove iron pipes radially outward to marry the tower to the planet's conductive layers. The tower's dome talked to the sky, the buried lattice talked to the earth. From their perspective, the Egyptians built the limestone mountain to talk to the sky and sunk their foundations and internal cavities to talk to the ground. Two cultures. Same coupling problem. Now think about materials. Limestone is paramagnetic and a decent dielectric. Granite is diamagnetic and stuffed with quartz. Stack limestone in a vast, tapered mass to shape fields and damp noise. Place granite plates in a tuned cavity at a specific height to sense and convert. Then run water below and around the base to keep ions moving, to keep a potential simmering. The system doesn't need wires if the medium itself carries the signal. Get this, the dead-end passage that whispers at 5.13 Hz sits like a metronome in stone. Infrasound that low lines up more with hydraulic pulses and ground sway than human singing. If those pulses propagated through the core, they'd ride the structure's body, nudging the chamber's stress state, shifting it ever so slightly toward or away from its sweet spot. You chant and the room leaps to life because the baseline is already warm, and you feel it as a slow, undeniable sway in your chest. Skeptics ask, where's the turbine, where are the cables? That's modern eyes looking for modern kit. Tesla's tower had no wires to homes either, the earth and air were the conductors. If a pyramid's function lived in resonance and field coupling, the signatures would be subtle. A stable magnetic hush inside, differential humidity channels, salt crusts where ions congregated, shafts that make no sense if you're only thinking airflow. Meanwhile, something else was happening along the Nile. Seasonal inundation changed groundwater head, pushing and pulling through the bedrock. Every rise loaded the plateau, every fall relieved it. Mechanical stress waves crept into the mass. In granite, stress doesn't just deform, it tickles quartz. Piezoelectric domains answer with charge. It's small, but if the chamber is already ringing, small is enough to matter. This decision to blend water, stone, and sky would haunt anyone trying to label the Great Pyramid a tomb and leave it there. Because once you accept water as a moving part, the oddities align. The precision course levels, the sudden changes in passage geometry, the places where salt blooms, the inexplicable shafts that don't ventilate anything. From their perspective, these are fluidic features and waveguides. Here's where it gets crazy practical. A slow, steady electrokinetic bias from groundwater flow sets a baseline potential. Seasonal pulses add low-frequency modulation. Human ritual voice drum adds mid-band excitation exactly where the granite likes to sing. And if the atmosphere cooperated on rare days, long-wavelength radio energy, the kind modeled to concentrate in the chambers, would ride the pyramid's shape and pool inside. Multiple inputs, one resonant core. Impact, you get a place where energy concentrates across domains, hydraulic, acoustic, electromagnetic, until the room becomes strangely sensitive. People feel it as presence, tingling skin, quickened breath, a sharpened focus that feels like being watched back. Instruments catch it as spikes. A civilization could encounter it as power, ritual, or both. And if you're Tesla, standing on Long Island staring at a silent tower, you'd recognize the logic in stone and water long before the textbooks gave it a name. Granite as a piezoelectric battery. To see how the chamber could turn stress into charge, we need to get intimate with the stone itself. Aswan granite isn't just heavy, it's quartz-rich, roughly a third quartz on average, sometimes more. Quartz is the quiet worker here. When you squeeze it, twist it, or vibrate it, its crystal lattice shifts ever so slightly and separates charge. That's piezoelectricity. In a lab, we align crystals to make the effect efficient. In natural granite, grains point every which way, so the effect is messy and distributed. But that doesn't mean it's absent. It means the energy lives in a million tiny pockets instead of one neat wire. Now remember the chamber's reality. Tons of granite plates, tight joints, minimal damping in a room that loves 121 Hz. When that mode lights up by voice, drum, or infrasound nudges, the faces of the blocks experience cyclical microstrain. It's tiny but relentless. Each cycle nudges quartz domains, pushing charge to microfractures, boundaries, and contact surfaces. If you were hoping for a light bulb, you'll be disappointed. If you're looking for a transducer that biases its own environment, this is where it starts to breathe. Get this, the piezoelectric response doesn't show up as a tidy DC outlet. It shows up as a swarm of local fields, transient potentials, and surface charges that move with the beat. In a stable magnetic hush, exactly what's been measured in that chamber. Those little charges aren't immediately scrambled by noise. They can collect along mineral boundaries, especially where the granite meets air or a different stone. Think of it as a battery that's always charging and discharging in microscopic pulses, synced to the room's heartbeat, subtle enough to ignore until your body reacts first. But there's a problem you should hear. Random orientations cancel. That's the skeptic's anchor. They're right, if your input is weak and your geometry is sloppy, the net effect is small. Therefore, you need resonance to magnify strain, and you need scale so the law of large numbers doesn't cancel everything out. The King's Chamber brings both. Big amplitudes at a favored note impose coherent stress across plates. Coherence is the antidote to randomness. You won't align grains, but you'll align timing. When timing aligns, even scattered domains can add up in bursts. Meanwhile, the sarcophagus sits inside the pressure field as its own resonator, tuned within the chamber's band. That box is more than a prop. It's a sympathetically vibrating mass-focusing stress near its corners and lip. Micro-triboelectric effects at contact points, piezoelectric stress in the granite wall behind it. Together they create hotspots where charge prefers to live. Instruments catching spikes in there. That's exactly how a granular battery would whisper. What nobody in the tour groups hears is that piezoelectric systems often need a load path. Where would charge go in a stone room? To edges, to seams, to any conductive contaminant. Groundwater salts migrate, copper flex, human sweat, even humidity change surface conductivity. Over time, ions crust in certain niches. Those white salt blooms some dismiss as mere efflorescence. From an electrical perspective, they're also evidence of ion traffic. Not proof of power generation, evidence of a medium ready to carry it. 3 days earlier, I reread Tesla's notes on resonant receivers. He obsessed over Q factor, the quality of resonance. High Q means energy sloshes without dying. The king's chamber behaves like a high Q box at its fundamental. Every chant deposits energy into standing waves. Every drumbeat primes the quartz. You don't need wires if the whole interior is the circuit. The limestone mass outside acts like a dielectric shell, muting external noise and shaping fields. The granite core acts like the active element, converting mechanical rhythm into electric temperament. Here's where it gets practical. Imagine 3 inputs: ground pulses from slow hydrology, mid-band acoustic drive from ritual sound, and occasional long-wavelength atmospheric energy the geometry prefers. Each input stresses quartz differently. Together they create a layered bias, low, mid, and rare high. The piezoelectric battery then doesn't sit at a fixed voltage, it oscillates. Oscillating fields can do work without wires, polarizing nearby materials, influencing ion drift, even aiding weak corona when humidity spikes. People in that room report hair raising, skin tingling, sound turning physical. That's physiology reacting to field and pressure. But there was one more problem: efficiency. Modern piezo devices convert with single-digit to low double-digit efficiencies when engineered. Natural granite won't match that. Therefore, the output must have been purpose-fit, not lamps, not motors. More like field effects, energizing a space, driving subtle electrochemistry, or feeding a process that only needs low current but benefits from persistence, like plasma discharge at sharp edges or catalyzing reactions in trace gases. If you're thinking ritual, that's a charged atmosphere. If you're thinking technology, that's a reaction chamber. Impact immediate and human. A priest hums and the room replies. A watcher's instrument ticks in bursts. A civilization frames it as a meeting with gods because the experience is undeniable. From an engineer's view, granite became a time-based battery, charging on stress, discharging into the air and into the stone's own seams. It didn't light a city, it tuned a field, and in Tesla's language, that's still power. The shafts, waveguides, or ritual ventilation. While we've been inside the granite heart, something else has been staring at us from the walls. 4 narrow shafts, 2 from the king's chamber and 2 from the queen's chamber, cutting through stone on razor-straight paths. For years they were called air shafts, even though 2 didn't reach the outside until modern tunneling broke them open. Air for what? A sealed room. That label never sat right. If they're not for breathing, what are they for? Start with dimensions and behavior. These channels are small, handspan wide, tight tolerances, polished in sections, and angled upward at precise inclinations. The northern king's chamber shaft doglegs around a block like a wire avoiding an obstacle, then continues straight again. The southern shafts point toward regions of the sky tied to specific stars in the Old Kingdom. Ritual alignment, absolutely plausible, but alignment doesn't cancel function. You can honor the sky and still build a device. Here's the stakes: if these aren't vents, they're intentional conduits, waveguides for something subtle, pressure pulses, sound, or low-frequency electromagnetic fields. In a resonant system, even a narrow channel can tune energy, bleed it, or feed it. Think organ pipes, but carved in stone and embedded in a mountain, and aimed at your nervous system as much as the sky. Action mattered under the stone. Take the queen's chamber. Its shafts were blocked by limestone plugs with little copper handles fixed into the face metal elements in a place where metal is scarce. When a robot camera crawled up one of them in the 1990s, it hit that door. Behind it, later probes found a second block, 2 capacitive plates separated by stone, sitting in a narrow conduit that doesn't ventilate anything. If you're keeping ritual symbolism, that's a sealed passage for the spirit. If you're keeping engineering eyes, that's a controlled termination, exactly how you'd condition a waveguide's end so it reflects, absorbs, or stores charge. Meanwhile, the king's chamber shafts were open to the exterior in antiquity, like horns coupled to the sky. Narrow cross-sections in their slopes suggest acoustic cutoff behaviors. At certain frequencies, waves won't propagate, at others they'll couple. If the chamber was ringing at 121 Hz while the outside wind and atmospheric fluctuations added their own long, slow pressure changes, the shafts become selective bridges between inside and out. They could bleed off unwanted modes, emit low-frequency sway, or phase-lock the room to a larger rhythm. What nobody mentions on tour is that waveguides aren't just for sound. A long, narrow, slightly conductive channel with occasional metal is also an RF structure. The pyramid's geometry has been modeled to concentrate long-wavelength radio energy in the chambers. If true under rare conditions, the shafts would be the natural inlets and outlets where fields focus, where standing waves anchor. Copper in a limestone throat becomes a tuning stub, a crude capacitor, a place for charge to gather and flip with the beat. But there's a problem you should hear. Evidence cuts both ways. Traditional Egyptology reads the star alignments as funerary symbolism, the copper fittings as ornamental or locking mechanisms for blocks. No ancient text says waveguide. They don't say vent either, but they do drown us in afterlife language. Therefore, any functional case has to ride on measurable behavior, not wishful thinking, repeatable sensations, consistent hotspots, and tests that ordinary visitors can feel. Impact shows up in micro details. Salt crusts form where moisture and ions repeatedly move. The doors sit where geometry shifts. In the king's chamber, those shafts enter just above the granite plates where stress is highest during resonance cycles. If you wanted to sample pressure, bleed harmonic energy, or route fields along precise paths, you put your conduits right there, near the nodal drama. And if you wanted the chamber to keep a stable electromagnetic hush while still talking to the outside world, you'd make those conduits narrow, angled, and selective. Meanwhile, think about the Queen's chamber again. It sits below in limestone with shafts that never originally breached. If the King's chamber is the active resonator, the Queen's is a conditioning stage tied to the body of the pyramid more than the sky. Its blocked channels could act like charge reservoirs or boundary setters, holding a bias that keeps the whole mass in a particular state. 2 levels, 2 roles, 1 system. Here's the human moment. A modern engineer watches a robot push into a shaft and hit a limestone door with copper pins. He expects stale air. He gets architecture. He stares at a small object that makes no sense if the goal is ventilation. He's not thinking tomb anymore. He's thinking circuit discipline in stone. This was the moment everything tightened for me. Shafts as selective throats in a giant resonator, not chimneys for a dead king. Ritual could still wrap it, but function would be doing the quiet work, guiding pressure, tuning fields, and letting the granite heart breathe in a language we're only starting to hear. The casing and the cap, a conductive shell story. While we've been inside the granite heart and threading the shafts, there's a skin we haven't talked about, the casing, and the missing cap that once sealed the apex. From the outside in, this is where the whole monument meets the sky. Start with the casing. In antiquity, the Great Pyramid wore tight, polished Tira limestone blocks, high density, fine-grained, and remarkably smooth. That polish wasn't just vanity. Smooth stone controls how air slides, how charge distributes, how moisture sheds. In a system that depends on resonance and field stability, the outer surface is the first filter. Roughness breeds turbulence, smoothness calms it. You don't need modern jargon to value that. You need a chisel and patience. Now remember what we've already seen. Limestone acts like a broad dielectric shell, granite acts like the active element. If the outer mantle is a uniform low-loss layer, it damps noise and shapes the electric environment hugging the pyramid. That matters because fields aren't just born inside, they also leak and return through the skin. Think of the casing as a massive capacitor plate paired to the earth beneath, the air above as the other dielectric, and the stone volume holding a charged temperament rather than a fixed voltage. In quiet conditions, that temperament stays steady. In storms, dust, or dry winds, it skews. Here's where it gets real. At the very top, there would have been a capstone. Accounts and engravings suggest a small pyramidion now gone. People argue over its material, limestone, granite, maybe metal sheathing. We don't have a confirmed cap in a museum with a brass tag that says Khufu S, so we have to speak carefully. But if you're designing for field control, the apex is decisive. A conductive or semiconductive tip dramatically changes where charge concentrates. Rounded, you bleed less. Sharp, you invite corona. In Tesla's world, the Wardenclyffe dome, 68 feet across, spread charge to reduce destructive discharge and promote controlled coupling. In stone, a polished apex would play the same game on a different scale. But there's a problem you should hear. We can't assert a copper cap without evidence. Mainstream findings don't list metal plating at the top, therefore let's anchor in what's known. The casing was precise, the apex once met in a tight point, and the structure's geometry alone, even in dielectric stone, focuses field lines. If occasional conductive films formed, dew-laced with salts, desert dust, trace moisture, they'd further modulate the apex behavior. Nature supplies thin conductors whether we install them or not. Meanwhile, the casing's joints were famously tight, less than a credit card in many places, sealed with gypsum-based mortar. That makes the shell more continuous electrically and mechanically. Continuity matters when you're chasing resonance. Gaps scatter energy, seams soak it. A sealed mantle keeps the pyramid's outer skin closer to a single behaving surface, so the inner drama can stay coherent. It's the same reason Tesla isolated his wooden tower frame from the ground while binding his buried iron to the earth. Separate the roles, keep each layer disciplined. What nobody mentions when the tour bus pulls up is how weather rewrote the story. Medieval builders stripped the casing, earthquakes loosened more. Today we see steps, terraces of core blocks. That roughness changes everything about airflow, charge distribution, and moisture behavior. If you're measuring now, you're measuring a wounded instrument. The old polished shell would have felt like glass, especially in dry wind, shedding dust, and discouraging random corona, the rough stair step. It traps eddies, concentrates charge at corners, and leaks. Here's a micro story. A scribe climbs near the apex on a cool morning. The stone is damp with dew. His hand brushes the point and there's the faintest sting, a tiny discharge you blame on nerves. He doesn't record it. Why would he? But that's how a big, quiet capacitor behaves when the air turns and the sun lifts the water away. Small, persistent exchanges at the skin set the tone for what's inside. Now think coupling. If long-wavelength atmospheric energy ever played with this shape, remember those simulations showing concentration in the chambers. The skin decides how much gets in and how it phases. Smooth casing, precise apex, controlled leakage, all of it supports selective coupling. You want the low, slow rhythms to pass. You want the sharp, noisy ones to skim off. In acoustics, you call it impedance matching. In stone, it's craft. Impact shows in the way the interior hush was measured. That sub 1% magnetic fluctuation suggests the shell did its job as a shield and shaper. Pair that with a tuned granite core and the casing and cap stop being decoration. They're the outer electrode of a planet-sized experiment, honest materials doing field work without wires. What Tesla would recognize here is the principle, not the parts, a disciplined interface to the sky. His dome spread charge to talk to the ionosphere softly. The pyramid's skin, at its best, would have done the same, whispering to the air while the heart inside sang. Tesla's blueprint, earth resonance, and wireless power. To see how a stone mountain could act like a circuit, it helps to walk with Tesla for a minute. In Colorado Springs, 1899, he drove a coil so hard the ground itself answered. He claimed to hear the planet ring back, stationary waves pacing across distance like ocean swells that didn't move. He called it earth resonance. Get this, his notes obsess over tuning, length of spark, coil geometry, frequency, and most of all, coupling to the earth. If the medium is the conductor, your first job is to join it. Wardenclyffe was the practical attempt. A 186-foot timber tower topped by a 68-foot metal dome, and beneath it, a deep shaft with iron staves driven radially from the base, hundreds of feet of buried metal reaching into damp, conductive ground. Above, the dome spoke softly to the sky. Below, the iron lattice gripped the earth. He powered it with a 200-kilowatt AC plant, pushing high-frequency currents into a magnifying transmitter designed to step up voltage and store energy between pulses. Then, release, hit the earth with a timed shove and wait for the echo. What nobody knew at the time of his fundraising pitch, at least not at Morgan's desk, was how stubborn the physics would be. The antenna he really wanted for ionosphere coupling would have been miles tall. He tried to solve it with resonance, let the system grow amplitude over time like a child on a swing. Drive in phase, back off losses, and the field builds. His language is everywhere. Q factor, standing waves, earth currents, the ionized heights above us acting as the return path. Now jump back to Giza, but keep his blueprint in your pocket. The pyramid is a tapered mass of dielectric limestone crowned by a once-perfect skin with a granite heart that rings. No wires, no generators, no valves, just geometry and materials with known responses. If Tesla looked at it, he'd ask two questions. One, how does it couple to the ground? Two, how does it talk to the sky? Limestone to earth, polished casing to air, granite core as the active element, those are answers in stone. Meanwhile, his system depended on two conductors, the ground and the atmosphere. The goal was global, create a shared medium where receivers, tuned the same way, could sip power from the ambient oscillation. He imagined factories, homes, and ships pulling energy without lines, only resonance. The practicality collapsed under money, competition, and unproven physics at that scale. But the principle couple, tune, accumulate, release remains clean. Here's where the parallels stop being cute and start being useful. The king's chamber behaves like a haiku cavity at a known note. The sarcophagus sits inside that band, intensifying stress fields right where the quartz lives. The shafts, tight and selective, could act like controlled couplers, emitting slow pressure rhythms, bleeding harmonics, or letting long wavelength fields settle into the box. Outside, the massive casing and apex condition the interface to the sky, shaping how charge forms and dissipates in wind, dust, or dew. But there was one problem: scale mismatch. Tesla's transmitter reached for the whole planet. The pyramid seems local, site-specific, sensitive, more like a laboratory instrument than a lighthouse. Therefore, its wireless isn't about shipping megawatts across continents. It's about creating a bounded field state where multiple domains, acoustic, hydraulic, electromagnetic, phase lock. In that zone, small energies add up, and phenomena that look negligible in isolation become palpable. 3 days earlier, I reread a peer-reviewed model showing the pyramid concentrating energy in and under its chambers at radio wavelengths hundreds of meters long. That's not proof of an ancient transmitter. It's proof the shape matters under certain drives. Pair that with a stable magnetic hush inside, less than a 10% variation, and you have the electrical quiet needed for weak effects to stand out. Tesla would call it reducing damping and noise. Here's a micro story. Tesla stands in the king's chamber. He claps once, listens to the 121 Hz bloom, and grins. He runs his hand along the granite joint, asks about the shafts, and wants to know the water table below. He doesn't care that nobody wired a lamp here. He cares that the system architecture, ground coupling, resonance storage, selective coupling to air, is present as a pattern. Impact shows up in intent. Wardenclyffe was an overt machine, naked with steel and copper, meant to flood the world with a coordinated beat. The pyramid hides its function in ritual and stone craft, tuned to a place, a climate, a culture of voice and procession. Both leverage the same logic. The medium is the channel, resonance is the amplifier, and geometry is the switchboard. But there's a final twist. Tesla's dream asked receivers to match his transmitter. If the Great Pyramid acted as a local transmitter, what were its receivers? Maybe human bodies, saline, conductive, responsive to field and pressure. Maybe small devices we haven't recovered. Or maybe the receiver was the monument itself, pulling ambient rhythms into a controlled state for ceremonies that needed a charged air. That's not less technical, it's a different application of the same blueprint. Meanwhile, mainstream physics still doubts large-scale earth current power delivery. Fair, nothing here claims grid output. What this claims is a resonance architecture that could convert and condition energy across domains without wires. If you've been inside that room when it sings, you know why Tesla would have stayed to listen. Chemical ghosts, the alleged power plant mix. Here's where the stone whispers get messy, salt blooms, odd residues, and the claim that chemistry, not just resonance, once lived inside these walls. Christopher Dunn and others point to crusts and discolorations in key passages, especially around the Queen's chamber niches and the lower corridors, as traces of a chemical process gone quiet long ago. If the pyramid was only a tomb, salts are just moisture scars. If it was a machine, salts become fingerprints. Stakes are simple. If chemical remnants map to a plausible reaction chain, then function stops being a metaphor. It becomes process. But there's a problem you should hear. Hard proof is thin, and mainstream archaeology attributes most efflorescence to groundwater wicking, human breath, and centuries of microclimates. Therefore, we have to be careful and tie every claim to physics that makes sense in stone. Action first. Walk the lower corridors and you'll see areas where white crystals creep from joints, where stone darkens in streaks. Efflorescence happens when mineral-laced moisture migrates through masonry and evaporates at the surface, leaving salts behind. In a resonant piezoelectric environment, those same saline films are more than decoration. They're variable conductors. When humidity rises, they carry charge more easily. When it drops, they insulate. That alone creates a dynamic load on whatever fields the chamber produces. Exactly the kind of environmental component a stone device would exploit. Meanwhile, Dunn's power plant model proposes something bolder, that the Queen's chamber function like a reaction cell, introducing reagents through shafts, producing a gas, often hypothesized as hydrogen, that could fill passages and interact with the resonant core above. Hydrogen, being light and responsive to high-frequency fields, shows up in his narrative as the working fluid. The copper fittings in the Queen's chamber shaft doors then become not handles but electrodes or capacitive plates in a conduit that condition this gas flow. It's an elegant story. It's also speculative. What nobody disputes is the physical behavior of humid, salty air in tight stone spaces. It's conductive, it creeps, and it leaves crusts where exchange repeats. If the shafts served as sealed conduits for anything air, vapor, or field, those copper pins would mark places where charge could settle or flip. Even without a chemical plant, you'd expect localized crusting around such transitions. That's consistent with simple ion migration under weak fields, the same way we see salt rings around old brick chimneys and cave vents. In other words, the ghosts can appear without a factory. Get this, the electrochemistry still helps the resonance case. Piezoelectric pulses in granite create transient fields. In damp sections, ions move with those microfields and collect at edges, especially where limestone meets copper. Over decades, that builds a memory in salt. You don't need beakers, you need time and a polarized environment. The pyramid had both. But there's a moment where the theory tempts us further. Hydrogen changes acoustic properties and breakdown thresholds. A chamber flooded with a lighter gas shifts its resonant Q, its speed of sound, its discharge behavior at sharp points. In Tesla's world, different gases change coil corona dramatically. If ancient builders learned by feel that certain days or preparations made the gods' breath stronger, they might have been tuning the medium without a chemistry textbook, burnishing the ritual by introducing humidity or trace gases from below. Is that a deliberate hydrogen plant? No confirmed evidence. Is it a plausible way to alter the chamber's behavior with simple means? Yes. Meanwhile, consider water as reagent and carrier. The plateau's microhydrology could leach natron-like salts through limestone, depositing sodium and calcium minerals where evaporation is persistent. Those deposits are chemical ghosts, then modify surface conductivity exactly where narrow shafts, tight joints, and copper stubs live. That's not a lab accident. That's a feedback loop. Geology sets the electrolytes, resonance sets the field moves ions, the ions rewrite the surfaces change the field. Impact shows up in small phenomena that visitors report and instruments catch. Metallic taste on the tongue in damp seasons, hair lifting near corners, M spikes that come and go with humidity. Those are electrochemical symptoms. They don't prove vats and valves, they prove that stone, water, and salts formed a living interface, one the builders may have nurtured with polish, casing continuity in the selective geometry of shafts. But there's one more tension we can't dodge. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary data, actual residue assays that tie to a reaction chain unique to a power device. We don't have that. What we do have are consistent physical principles: piezoelectric stress creating fields, saline moisture forming dynamic conductors, copper altering local capacitance, and geometry focusing both sound and long wavelength energy. In that light, the chemical ghosts stop being a smoking gun and start being the medium, the quiet, necessary layer that let a resonant stone engine breathe. The sound of stone, acoustic evidence, and human accounts. If you stand in the king's chamber when it's quiet, the silence isn't empty, it's spring-loaded. A single syllable can set the air trembling, and when the tone lands on the room's liking, you feel it first, ribs buzzing before you hear it bloom. Engineers brought meters, monks brought chants, curious travelers brought nothing but breath. They all left with the same story, the room answers. Stakes first, human scale. A guide once whispered a vowel to keep from angering the guards. The group felt the floor tickle their ankles. One man laughed, nervous, short, and the laugh came back as a low drone that wasn't his. He put a hand to the wall and swore the stone pulsed. He didn't have vocabulary for Eigen modes or nodes. He had a hand, a chest, and a story to repeat. That's how this thing gets under your skin. Action, what actually happens when people sound the room. Experienced visitors test pitches. They start below comfortable voice and inch up. Around the low A, the neighborhood of that measured 121 Hz, you see posture change. Lips go slack, eyes widen, and voices flatten to something steadier, less personal. It's not theatrical, it's physiological. The chamber encourages one note and punishes the rest. Sing above it and you're just singing. Land on it and you become a driver. Meanwhile, small groups chant in rounds. This is where the chamber shows off. One voice hits the sweet spot. Another climbs a third above, then drops. The interference pattern sets up in the granite box, and you can map it with skin, hot here, cold there, no sound at all along a thin, invisible plane. People step across a pressure node and gasp because their own voice vanishes for a heartbeat. That's a standing wave playing with them, a geometry lesson delivered as a prank. Get this, engineers who have measured the chamber bring dumb facts to an emotional party. They'll tell you decay times stretch near the fundamental. They'll show plots with a fat peak, confirm that the sarcophagus hums sympathetically inside a narrow band. Then they'll put the instruments down and hum anyway, because data can't replace the feeling of air turning thick. That blend, hard numbers and soft awe, keeps the story honest. But there's a problem you should hear. We've romanticized a lot of rooms. Churches, caves, cisterns, they all have pockets of magic, so what's different here? The reports are consistent about intensity, coherence, and the body effect. Visitors describe pressure more than sound, as if invisible hands push from every direction. The chest buzz is common. The metallic taste shows up when humidity rises. And the strangest detail repeats, the sense that a whisper goes too far, as if the room is amplifying low input while scolding loud speech. That's haiku behavior you can feel. Meanwhile, the Queen's chamber tells a quieter story. Fewer people report the chest press there, more talk about a flutter, a tremolo that rides on certain vowels. It sits in limestone, not granite, and the sensation shifts accordingly. Less electricity, more breath. Some describe a resonance that seems to migrate, like the room is searching for a lock. Others mention an odd hush near the shaft mouths, as if those tiny openings drink the sound. Whether you buy function or ritual, the experience is targeted, not generic cave echo. Here's a micro story from a sound engineer who toured with a pocket tone generator. He walked the chamber while sweeping frequencies and watched a cheap SPL app spike at familiar spots. He slid the tone down, stopped near the band, and the floor felt like a drum underfoot, no boom, just a tactile shimmer. His palms tingled, his throat tightened with that inexplicable stage fright feeling. He looked at his partner and didn't say a word because words were suddenly heavy. Later on the plateau, he joked that the room needs a warning label. Objects and feelings may be closer than they appear. Impact shows up afterward in behavior. People leave quieter, some report headaches, others euphoria. A few feel a hangover that lasts an hour, a mix of dehydration, exertion, and maybe the body settling after being driven at a fixed frequency. Hands shake slightly, decision-making feels oddly crisp. That's not mysticism, that's biomechanics. Hearts, lungs, and inner ears are resonant systems too. Drive anything long enough and it answers. What nobody includes in the brochure is how the chamber handles groups versus singles. One person can light the room, two can lock it, five can fight it. When multiple voices chase the same note imperfectly, you get beating, slow rises and falls in intensity that make the pressure throb. Some call it the engine turning over. In technical terms, interference patterns. In human terms, the moment the stone seems to breathe. Meanwhile, instruments have their own reactions. Meters pop in short bursts during strong chanting, then calm when the sound stops. Not always, not everywhere, and not proof of electricity, but consistent enough to keep careful people curious. The pattern lines up with the story we've traced: pressure fields organizing, quartz domains waking, charges accumulating along seams, then bleeding into the air as the sound decays. You don't need a conspiracy to make that happen. You need stone, shape, and a voice that knows where to stand. So the acoustics aren't a parlor trick. They're the interface, the button you press that presses back. And once you've felt that room answer, it's hard to call it empty space. It behaves like a device because, to your body, it is one. The Giza machine, alignments, pyramids, and a system design. While we've been listening inside one chamber, something larger has been hiding in plain sight outside. Giza isn't a single device, it's a layout. 3 pyramids, causeways, satellite structures, and a bedrock platform cut like a circuit board. If you only stare at Khufu, you miss the system design. Start with alignment. The Great Pyramid sides track true north with astonishing accuracy, off by only a few arc minutes. That's not a party trick. Orientation matters to fields, winds, and the slow pressures the earth breathes. Meanwhile, the 3 main pyramids step down the plateau, offset in a pattern that mirrors the belt of Orion. Ritual, absolutely, but alignments can do double duty. If you're shaping flows of people, of sound, of ground stress, you arrange masses so their shadows and couplings make sense over days and seasons. Now remember the bedrock. The plateau isn't a random base. It's a limestone mesa with fossil channels and perched aquifers. Builders carved the platform flat in stages, then laid cores and casing with coarse levels that hold to tight tolerances. That kind of leveling across acres doesn't just please surveyors. It sets reference planes so pressure waves, ground motion, and even subsurface water shifts interact predictably. You're not throwing a machine onto dirt. You're machining the dirt first. Get this, the second pyramid coffer still clings to a swath of smooth casing near its apex. That surviving skin tells you what Khufu once wore head to toe, a glossy dielectric mantle. Coffer sits slightly higher groundwise despite being shorter. From a system view, that's staging. One mass talks to air differently than the other because of elevation and remaining skin. Menkora, the smallest, brings a third voice with granite casing at the bottom courses, granite outside, not just inside. Different skins, different interfaces. If you're thinking ritual tiers, that's fine. If you're thinking field gradients across a campus, that's also fine. Meanwhile, the causeways run like traces on a board. Khufu's causeway angles east toward the valley temple. Khafre's points to his sphinx and valley complex. In flood seasons, these low channels would have lived near wetter ground and changing humidity. Stone surfaces that connect wet to dry become slow conductors when dew and dust coat them. Over long cycles, they can carry bias. You don't need wires to move a field state from one mass to another. You need connected geometry and a medium that changes with the sun. But there was one problem: where's the explicit coupling? You want to see pipes, rods, crosslinks. Stone hides them differently. Think of the subterranean features beneath Khufu, the descending passage, the subterranean chamber cut deep in bedrock. That's an anchor. Compare to Khafre, whose bedrock core looms from a higher knoll with a different substructure. System-wise, you've got 2 oscillators coupled through the ground, each with distinct boundary conditions. Slightly different heights, angles, and skins mean they don't ring identically. They beat. Beating between close frequencies creates slow envelopes, rise and fall patterns over minutes or hours. On a plateau, that's a modulation you can feel. What nobody mentions while snapping photos is the Sphinx as an interface. Carved from bedrock at Kafir's feet, flanked by a processional way, it sits in a carved bowl that traps wind and sound differently than flat rock. If the plateau hosted ceremonies timed to resonance locks, you gather where the coupling feels strongest. The Sphinx enclosure is a natural amplifier of low murmur, a listening post at the system's edge. Here's a micro-story. Dawn on a humid morning, the valley still wet, the plateau dry, air drifts upslope. A group moves along Khufu's causeway in a slow rhythm, voices low. The Great Pyramid's heart is primed by groundwater head and cool stone. Across the way, Kafir's skin near the top gleams with dew, bleeding charge softly into warming air. From their perspective, it's a ritual procession. From an engineer's angle, it's a timed startup. Bias the system with humidity, add acoustic drive, let two masses exchange energy through the ground. Meanwhile, the small satellites, queens, pyramids, mastaba fields, perimeter walls aren't random clutter. Low stone masses around a resonator act like impedance transformers. They break up gusts, tune boundary layers, and create microclimates that keep the main body stable. A machine hates noise. A city of stone can lower it. But there's a skeptic in the room, and they're right to ask, if this is a machine, where's the output? Tesla wanted lamps and motors. Here the output looks like a field state, a charged air, a stabilized hush, a physical pressure that organizes bodies and possibly processes. In that sense, Giza's design is architectural control theory, geometry that shepherds energy where people stand, chant, and breathe. You don't have to accept a power grid to see system thinking in the layout. Impact is in the redundancies, 3 pyramids, not one, multiple chambers with different materials, parallel causeways, separate valley temples tied to water. If one mass was down for restoration or ritual prep, the others could hold the plateau's temperament. That's how you build resilience. That's how you keep a system alive for centuries, by making it modular. This was the moment the map stopped being a tourist plan and became a wiring diagram in my head. North-south precision for cosmic and wind coupling. East-west causeways as dampers and feeds. Heights staggered to create slow beats. Skins tuned per pyramid. A granite heart at the center as the active element. The Giza machine isn't a myth. It's a campus where stone, water, air, and people phase lock on purpose. Power to what? Plausible uses without modern wires. If the Giza machine didn't light bulbs or run motors, what did it feed? Start with what the system actually produces. Organized fields, pressure, and subtle charge. Those are perfect for processes that don't need wires, where the medium itself is the component. One obvious candidate is atmospheric conditioning. A high-Q chamber driving piezoelectric pulses into a controlled magnetic hush can polarize air. Polarized air changes how aerosols behave. Moisture condenses differently, dust settles faster, and ions cluster at edges. In a ritual frame, that turns a room into a living breath, where incense hangs in sheets and the air feels thick with presence. In engineering terms, you're modulating charge density and particulate behavior. It's not decoration, it's function. Stabilize the microclimate so the chamber stays predictable. Next, think electrochemistry without jars. Weak oscillating fields across damp stone and saline films can drive ion migration, slow, relentless, cumulative. That supports surface catalysis, changes in the chemistry of trace gases, enhanced adsorption on mineral faces, even low-level ozone or peroxide formation in tiny amounts. Why care? Because smell and sensation change experience. A barely perceptible shift in the air's chemistry, cleaner, sharper, charged, is exactly what people report in resonant spaces. If the Queen's chamber acted as a conditioning stage, its humidity and salts could have primed air that moved upward, not as a gale, but as a slowly refreshed medium with altered properties. There's also the body as receiver. Humans are saline, conductive, and full of resonant cavities, lungs, sinuses, skull. Drive a room at 121 Hz, add low infrasound pulses from the stone below, and people synchronize. Heart rate variability can phase lock to slow beats, breath settles into the chamber's rhythm, voice drops to the note the room prefers. That's not mystic trance by decree, that's entrainment. Priests would have called it union, Tesla would have called it coherence. The power goes into nervous systems, creating a repeatable state for ceremony, judgment, or initiation. Meanwhile, consider information, not electricity. A resonant structure can encode timing. Processions, chants, drum sequences performed within a space that amplifies correct frequencies become a clock you can feel. Over generations, that trains a culture to a standard. The plateau turns into a metronome for the calendar, for civic rites, for agriculture keyed to the Nile's rise. You don't announce, we built a clock. You just keep time by standing where the stone tells you when you're in phase. There's a practical layer too, preservation and testing. A stable electromagnetic hush with controlled humidity slows decay of organics and pigments. The chamber could serve as a proving ground for materials, oils, resins, inks subjected to subtle fields while sound drives microflows along the stone. Craftsmen learn which mixtures endure by bringing them here, not because they understand piezoelectricity, but because the room chooses recipes that survive. Knowledge accumulates as tradition, this oil for this rite, this binder for this color. Get this, the shafts become functional ports in this story, not vents but tuning stubs that emit slow atmospheric swings and bleed high-frequency noise. On rare days when the atmosphere cooperates, humidity up, wind down, the external long waves the shape prefers can couple, deepening the chamber's lock. A festival date might align with those conditions by observation alone. The why is felt, not graphed. But there's a problem you should hear. None of this runs a city. Modern ears want visible output, lamps blazing, tools spinning. The Giza machine offers field states, entrainment, and slow chemistry. Is that power? If your aim is to regulate bodies, mark time, sanctify authority, and test matter, yes. In a world before copper grids, control of space is control of energy. There's another plausible use hiding in plain sight: geophysical sensing. A high-Q resonator coupled to ground is a seismometer you can stand inside. Tiny shifts in groundwater head, distant tremors, or pressure changes turn into audible quirks. Priests become interpreters of the earth's murmur. That blurs the line between divination and instrumentation. If you can anticipate flood intensity by how the chamber answers a chant at dawn, you've got actionable intelligence without a gauge. Meanwhile, think education through embodied practice. Apprentices learn stonecraft, timing, and voice by feeling the lock. The chamber is a teacher. Tesla trained devices to resonance. Here, humans learn to act like tuned receivers. That preserves technique better than scrolls because the body remembers what the stone rewards. Here's a micro story. A novice enters at dusk. The master hums once, the room blooms. The novice tries and scatters. The master adjusts posture, breath, vowel. On the third try, the novice lands the note and feels the pushback. Ribs buzz, skin prickles, a calm drops, breathing slows, focus narrows. No lecture needed. The space has done the instruction. Speculation extends to low corona effects at sharp edges, sparks too small to impress, big enough to matter for scent, mood, and myth. A faint blue at a point during the wet season becomes a god's sign. The tale outlives the physics, but the physics keep repeating. So power to what? To air, to bodies, to timekeeping, to materials, to reading the ground. The output is order, a repeatable state where stone, water, and voice make the world feel aligned. Tesla chased global resonance. Giza held it in one place and used it. The erasure, missing casing, lost apex, and silent inscriptions. There's a reason our measurements fight noise today. The instrument we're testing is wounded. The Great Pyramid used to gleam, tight Tura limestone casing locked so clean you could run a fingertip across and barely feel a seam. Earthquakes loosened it, medieval quarrying stripped it, time roughened the rest. What we study now is a terraced core. That matters because smooth skin calmed airflow and charge on the surface, rough steps trap eddies and leak. If you're looking for subtle fields, the missing casing is the first erasure. It also erased evidence. A polished mantle absorbs history differently than a broken staircase. Dew would have sheeted and slid, dust would have skated off, tiny discharges would have spread gently instead of spiking at corners. When the skin went, the pyramid's outer electrical behavior changed character. We lost the interface Tesla would have recognized, an apex designed to speak softly to the sky. Now it hisses in places it used to whisper. Then there's the apex itself. The pyramidion is gone. We don't have a tagged cap from Khufu on a museum plinth. Without it, arguments multiply. Was it limestone, granite, or sheathed? We can't assert what isn't found. But the absence tells its own story. The one place where field concentrates most, where shape matters most, is missing. If you were trying to replicate the original coupling to air today, you're guessing at the most sensitive part. Change the tip's curvature by inches and you change how charge forms and bleeds. That's not aesthetic loss, that's functional amputation. What nobody mentions while pointing at the ragged top is how the missing casing and apex blur readings inward. The shell shaped the interior hush. Modern M surveys that find a reasonably stable chamber environment are already measuring a compromised system. Imagine the numbers when the skin was continuous, when that sub 1% magnetic variation had a perfect cloak. We might be undercounting the original quiet by a long mile. Now about the silence carved in stone, inscriptions. Khufu's name appears in red quarry marks high in relieving chambers, but the king's chamber itself, the supposed core of a royal tomb, carries no carved funerary texts, no ritual lists on the walls, no spells. It's a blank box of granite. Egyptology explains this with Old Kingdom norms. Decoration lived more in temples, not in core chambers. That's fair. Yet the quiet is striking if you expected narrative everywhere. A high-precision room, tuned and bare, invites a different reading. Function over inscription. Skeptics push back. Silence isn't proof of machines. Agreed. It is, but it is a constraint. A device can't be inferred from writing. Here the absence of writing refuses to pin the chamber to a singular funerary script. That leaves room, literally, for behavior to define purpose. In a space where resonance and piezoelectric stress speak louder than glyphs, walls don't tell the story, the room does. Meanwhile, what we do have are later scars, graffiti, soot, modern holes, restoration joints. Every cut, every bolt, every patch inserts new conductors, rough edges, and moisture traps. Small, yes, but in a high-Q environment, small is leverage. You can't chant today and declare, this is exactly what priests felt, because the chamber hosts steel handrails and tourists' breath. Even that matters electrically. Erasure didn't end with medieval quarrymen, it continues with crowd control. Here is where the missing casing and silent walls intersect. If the outer skin was the pyramid's gentle hand to the sky and the inner granite was the heart, the inscriptions would have been the mind declaring purpose. We lost the hand, the heart still beats, the mind whispers only in structure. That forces us to read the body, not a text. It's uncomfortable. It's also honest. There's a human cost to erasure too. Stories rush in when evidence thins. Copper caps, golden tips, secret coils, claims bloom because the apex is gone. The safer path is to let what remains constrain us. Precise leveling, resonant granite, selective shafts, a once glossy dielectric shell, and a chamber that performs. Those facts survive the missing crown. Imagine Tesla walking up the north face when the casing still shined. He'd squint at the apex, note the polish, then ask to stand inside the granite box. He wouldn't ask for an inscription, he'd ask for quiet. The erasures took away the surface that spoke to the sky and the signature at the top. They didn't take the hum. Skeptics' case, tomb theory, ritual architecture, and counter-evidence. Before we run too far with resonance and field states, we need to face the room the way a sober Egyptologist does. Their case is straightforward. This is a royal tomb complex embedded in a ritual landscape, executed with precision to honor a divine king, not to power a device. They don't need waveguides, they have context. Stakes first, if they're right, our machine reading turns craft into conspiracy and blinds us to what the Egyptians said about themselves. The Old Kingdom wasn't hiding a grid, it was building eternity. Action as they lay it out. Start with architecture. A pyramid linked by a causeway to a valley temple near the Nile, with mortuary temples, boat pits, and subsidiary tombs surrounding the main monument. That's a funerary campus by the book. Inscriptions naming Khufu exist in the upper relieving chambers, painted quarry marks used by work crews, mundane, logistical, and firmly in the 4th dynasty. The sarcophagus-sized granite box in the king's chamber. A stone coffin undersized for modern tastes but consistent with Old Kingdom practice when you consider the lid is gone. The internal passages, descending, ascending grand gallery, serve symbolic and practical roles, ceiling blocks, processional routes, and star-aligned channels for the king's spirit. No copper caps required. Meanwhile, the shafts have an accepted reading. Their angles align with stars that mattered, Orion's belt, Sirius, circumpolars, serving as celestial pointers for the Ba and Ka. The queen's chamber doors with copper fittings. Skeptics call them blocking stones with ornamental fasteners or specialized handles used during construction, later sealed for ritual purity. The fact that 2 lower shafts didn't originally breach the exterior is used as proof they weren't vents. They were spirit passages by design. What nobody in that camp ignores is the craftsmanship. Tight casing joints, remarkable leveling, and precise orientation aren't proof of technology. They're proof of state power, skilled labor, and a culture obsessed with order. MAD is their keyword, cosmic balance expressed through straight lines and true corners. The pyramid's north alignment isn't for magnetic coupling, it's a statement of cosmic harmony. Get this, skeptics also raise the material's flag. Natural granite has randomly oriented quartz grains. Without engineered alignment, the bulk piezoelectric effect averages towards 0. Chamber resonance is real, they concede, but acoustics happen in many stone rooms. A strong mode at 121 Hz doesn't turn a sarcophagus into a generator. It turns a boxy room into a boxy room that sings. The magnetic hush measurements. Interesting but not extraordinary in a massive stone enclosure with few conductive inclusions. As for electromagnetic focusing models at long wavelengths, they point out those are boundary condition simulations. They show how a shape might concentrate fields if driven, not that ancient builders drove it. Then they bring history's hammer. Not a single Old Kingdom text, relief, or papyrus describes power generation, wireless energy, or mechanical exploitation of piezoelectric phenomena. Tomb inscriptions explode with afterlife logistics, food, boats, offerings, star journeys, not engineering manuals. The absence of explicit testimony for them is decisive. You can't backfill intent with modern physics metaphors. They move to water. Yes, new research on Djoser suggests hydraulic lift concepts in earlier monuments. That doesn't transplant Khufu as a generator. The plateau's hydrology is complex, but evidence of managed groundwater for construction doesn't equal electrokinetic design. Salt crust, classic efflorescence. Moisture wicks through porous limestone, dissolves natron-like minerals, and crystallizes when air dries. Copper pins, decorative or structural, not electrodes. But there's a problem in their own lane they acknowledge quietly: the king's chamber's starkness. No carved spells, no sarcophagus lid, no obvious funerary equipment. They explain it with looting, later reuse, and a temple-centric text culture. It's plausible. It's also the persistent itch that alternative readings scratch. Impact of their case lands in caution. Extraordinary claims need hard evidence, explicit residues tying to unique reaction chain, metalwork that only makes sense electrically, repeatable measurements of non-trivial energy conversion under controlled conditions. Without that, the pyramid as power plant reads as projection. Tesla's Wardenclyffe is documented: blueprints, photos, funding letters. The Great Pyramid's supposed machine parts aren't. Meanwhile, they ask a fair engineering question: where's the load? A system that converts energy for work needs a defined output and receivers. Alternative theories speak of field states and human entrainment, interesting but slippery. If the output is ritual experience, we've drifted from power plant to performance space, which is just a more technical way to say temple. Here's where their argument sharpens. Misapplying modern concepts can erase ancient agency. Egyptians didn't need our physics to make meaning. If the chamber's resonance aided ceremony, that's architecture, not electricity. Calling it a generator risks missing a cultural masterpiece in its own terms. They're not wrong about standards of proof. Peer-reviewed acoustic measurements exist. Electromagnetic modeling exists. Piezoelectric granite is a fact. Bulk efficiency in random stone is low. None of that alone or together confirms a deliberate energy device. It confirms a monument that behaves intriguingly under sound and field, something the builders could have noticed and used ritually without abstracting it as power. So the skeptical case stands on context, texts, and parsimony, ritual architecture, funerary function, and caution against retrofitting Tesla onto Khufu. It doesn't flatten the hum. It insists we earn the leap from hum to machine with evidence that can't be read any other way. Lightning, ionosphere, and the desert conductor. While the skeptic leans on text, the sky leans on physics. Egypt's plateau sits under a vast, dry capacitor, hot ground, dry air, and far above the ionosphere, an electrically active shell that answers storms thousands of miles away. On quiet days, there's a fair weather electric field, roughly 100 volts per meter near the surface, drifting with global thunderstorm rhythm. On wild days, that field surges and lightning stitches ground to sky. The desert becomes a conductor when it wants to be. Now remember Tesla's pattern: 2 terminals, earth below and sky above, with a disciplined interface at each end. Wardenclyffe spread charge with a metal dome to tame discharge. Its buried iron spears clasp damp soil to grip the planet. Translate that logic to Giza's materials. The plateau's limestone is porous, salt-laced in places, and seasonally damp at depth. The pyramid's base couples into that matrix like a broad foot on a conductive rug. Above, a once polished mantle and tight apex shaped how charge formed and bled into air. No wires, just geometry sitting between 2 reservoirs. Get this: the fair weather field isn't a trickle you can run a motor on, but it's persistent, global, and phase coherent with the planet's thunder activity. That means timing lives in the air. The pyramid's large, gently sloped sides would have spread surface charge more evenly than a needle, reducing random corona and favoring slow, uniform exchange. When humidity rose at dawn or during Nile seasons, thin conductive films formed on the casing. That's when big stone acts less like an insulator and more like a patient wick, easing charge movement without the violence of sparks. Meanwhile, lightning matters even when it doesn't strike the tip. Nearby strikes or distant storm networks drive transient surges in the ground and tweak the ionospheric boundary. Long wavelengths, hundreds of meters to kilometers, wash across the plateau. The same modeling that showed energy concentration in the chambers under long wave drive implies this. When the sky hums in that band, the pyramid's shape can catch a piece of it. Not as a radio tower, not as a broadcast station, but as a resonant lump that slightly intensifies the local field where its geometry prefers. But there's a problem you should hear. Stone isn't copper and the ionosphere is far. Without a metal crown or a powered source, the coupling is weak. Therefore, the function must match the scale. Bias the environment, don't blast it. In practice, that looks like threshold nudges, lowering the point where tiny coronas form at edges, shifting how aerosols cluster, changing how saline films conduct along joints. Those are small effects that become large in a high Q interior, where noise is low and timing matters. Here's where the desert helps. Dust carries minerals, wind charges grains, sandstorms create their own electric drama. A smooth casing would have rejected much of that, but what did land would polarize under the fair weather field. At the apex, curvature decides everything. A slightly rounded tip discourages hot points, encouraging a soft, continuous current to the air in humid moments, a silent, invisible draft of ions. In Tesla's terms, that's controlled leakage. In ritual terms, that's a breath that arrives on schedule with dawn moisture. 3 days earlier, I looked at lightning density maps over North Africa. Storm tracks favor other regions, but seasonal bursts sweep in. Imagine a festival timed not to a scribal calendar alone, but to the sky's electric mood. Humidity up, pressure down, distant storms lifting the global circuit. Priests wouldn't call it Schumann resonance or ionospheric potential. They'd call it a day when the god listens. They'd be right in the language that counts, experience. Meanwhile, the pyramid's base tells a quieter story. Bedrock cut flat, perimeter blocks keyed like teeth, and a mass that presses into limestone laced with fossil channels. When rain did come rare but real, or when the Nile's high water seeped through the subsurface, the ground beneath changed conductivity. That modulated the lower terminal of this natural capacitor. Slow changes below paired with slow changes above create beat patterns the interior could feel. Infrasound in passages, slight shifts in the chamber's lock, the difference between a voice that starts the engine and a voice that doesn't. What nobody mentions on casual tour is that fair weather current is directional, sky to ground, a faint rain of charge. A large, symmetric, polished pyramid presents a controlled path for that descent. Not a lightning rod, not a spark show, an organizer. The outside shapes the flow, the inside senses the order. Tesla would have approved of the discipline, broad coupling to earth, gentle hand to sky, and a resonant heart waiting to be nudged when the world circuit breathes. Impact lives in repeatability. On certain mornings, hair would rise near corners, incense would sheet, whispers would travel too far, and the room would answer with less effort. You don't need a copper crown to make that happen. You need a desert conductor, a sky that hums, and stone shaped to meet both halfway. Night at the Pyramid, a narrative reconstruction. Dusk folds over the plateau like a slow breath. The guides are gone, the wind calms. A small group waits at the base, 5 people, no flashlights, nothing metal except a ring one of them forgot to remove. They're not here to break rules, they're here to meet a schedule the sky keeps. Humidity rises with the chill. The fair weather field strengthens as evening storms far away pump the global circuit. This is the window. They climb the north face stairs under a dim spill of stars. No chatter. Shoes scuff limestone roughened by 1,000 years of missing skin. At the entrance, the air cools and a smell of dust and chalk clings to the throat. Inside the descending passage, the slope turns bodies into metronomes, footfalls ticking a fixed beat. The stone soaks the sound and gives nothing back. That's how instruments behave before they tune. At the junction, they angle up the ascending passage. The air tightens, the temperature drops another degree. One of them stops and presses a palm to the wall. It's not cold, it's steady, like touching something that refuses to move with you. They keep climbing. Then the grand gallery opens, a stone canyon with a ribbed ceiling that seems to draw breath. The leader holds out a hand. No humming, no chant, just a pause for the room to notice them. The air here is drier than outside, but not by much. Perfect. They move in single file along the central ramp, heels finding that narrow, worn path the centuries carved. Above their heads, the corbelled tiers recede into darkness like the inside of a wooden hull. One taps the rail slot with a fingertip and feels a low thrum, not a sound, a pressure under the nail. He doesn't mention it. He's not sure whether he felt it or thought it. At the top, the low corridor to the king's chamber forces them to bow. Every entry a small ritual, whether you believe in gods or not. They step into the granite box and stop. The silence has weight. No one speaks. It's not reverence, it's self-preservation. Loudness feels wrong, like shouting in a library that belongs to someone else. The leader nods to the smallest man. He's there to start the engine. He takes a breath and lets out a single round vowel, soft as conversation. The sound lands and comes back as a gentle press. He steps half a pace to the left, tries again, and the room answers with more confidence. Another half pace. Third try, he hits the neighborhood of that low A. The chamber blooms. It's not loud, it's thick. Ribs buzz. The skin between shoulder blades prickles. The floor hums in the soles. They don't push, they sustain. The note becomes a line drawn in air. The sarcophagus catches it. You can hear a woodless cello hiding under the tone. The leader raises 2 fingers. The tallest woman adds a second note, a soft third above, and the room reveals its map. Invisible planes of pressure stand up like glass. If you move your head 3 inches, your own voice vanishes and then returns not as echo, but as a partner. She adjusts down a hair. The beat between voices slows. The chamber locks. Meanwhile, the shafts play their part. No wind, no draft, but along the south wall, a faint coolness pools near the mouth of the southern conduit. It's not airflow you can feel on cheeks. It's a shift in the air's bite, as if charge density ticked up. The man with the ring realizes it's tingling. He slips it into a pocket. His finger keeps humming anyway. Get this, they haven't raised their volume. The pressure climbs without loudness, that's high Q. The granite's quartz wakes along its grainy threads, countless tiny domains flexing under the stress of sound and giving it back as small fields. You can taste metal now, not iron, more like ozone's cousin. It sits at the back of the tongue, medicinal and clean. The leader drops his voice to whisper level. The tone holds. He cuts it with a small hand wave. The chamber keeps singing for a heartbeat, then lets go. In that tale, M meters would spike if they'd brought them. They didn't. They brought bodies. They shift positions. The smallest man stands by the sarcophagus, hands on the lip. He hums and feels the box answer in his bones. It's not myth, it's coupling. A chamber inside a chamber, granite on granite, pushing and pulling at the same note. He opens his eyes and sees nothing different, but he's taller now, not in inches, in awareness. The edges of the room are clearer. He could walk that invisible pressure plane with eyes closed. The tallest woman takes a step toward the southern shaft and breathes a low tone under her breath. The taste intensifies. The hair on her forearms lifts. She feels ridiculous for noticing hairs, but in this room, hairs are instruments. She smiles without moving her mouth. Then the leader drops the trick. He hums the fundamental, then on the second breath, slides a slow beat in and out, bending a few hertz either side. The room shudders, not violent, but decisive, like an animal turning to listen. The group feels it too. The pressure rises and falls at a new pace, a slow envelope that wasn't there before. That's beating, two close tones interfering, creating a pulse that bodies love to follow. The chamber isn't a box anymore, it's a lung. Meanwhile outside, the desert cools and the fair weather current strengthens as the ionosphere's night rules settle. Nothing sparks, nobody glows, but something organizes. The shafts become quiet stubs tuned to the planet's slow breathing. The polished casing they wish still existed would have smoothed the coupling. Even wounded, the instrument answers. They end without words. The silence after the sound isn't empty. It's charged with the memory of a tone. The group files out, each brushing a granite joint with light fingers, like saying thanks to a machine that didn't need a knob. On the plateau, the stars feel closer. The city lights on the horizon look like someone else's era. Back at the base, one of them laughs softly, the careful kind that doesn't break anything. He says it out loud because he needs to. It isn't a tomb tonight. It's a tuned stone that breathes when you ask right. The leader just nods. They walk away without turning, leaving the instrument to cool in the desert's electric hush. Tesla, legacy, and the meaning of a lost grid. Tesla dies in a New York hotel room with drawings in his head no ledger could afford. Wardenclyffe is long gone, blown apart for scrap in 1917, its dome never speaking to the sky. But the blueprint he chased won't sit still. Two terminals, a resonant heart, geometry that couples softly to air and grips Earth like a promise. If you've walked the granite box at Giza and felt it press back, you already know why his ghost belongs here. Stakes human first. Tesla wanted a world where power arrived like weather, everywhere, not parceled through wires and monopolies. He saw factories sipping from the Earth's pulse and ships pulling current from the sky. Investors saw a problem you can't meter. Marconi sprinted past with simple radio and took the glory that wins budgets. Tesla's tower rotted while the grid that did get built learned to love poles and meters. His lost grid wasn't just an engineering path that failed. It was a different idea of who gets to touch energy. Now remember what the stone taught us. The pyramid isn't a power station in the modern sense. No turbines, no dynamos, no copper crowning proof. But it does something Wardenclyffe never got to do. It shows a working resonance architecture embodied in a place surviving for millennia. The medium is the message, and the medium is rock, air, and water tuned to each other. The grid, if you want to use that word, isn't a network of wires. It's a network of conditions, humidity, shape, long wave timing, brought into cooperation by craft and ritual. Get this, Tesla's most radical move wasn't voltage, it was empathy for mediums. He built a transmitter that treated the Earth and the ionosphere as partners. That's the same humility the plateau demands. You don't force, you tune. The casing becomes manners with the sky. The base becomes patience with the ground. The chamber becomes a quiet place where small pushes add up. Different centuries, same posture. But there's a problem you should hear. We romanticize both men and stones. Tesla's notes are full of claims that couldn't be replicated at scale. The pyramid carries no manual, no equation carved into casing blocks. If we declare a one-to-one lineage, Khufu to Colorado to Shoreham, we're telling a neat story that history doesn't confirm. The honest thread is thinner and in a way braver. Separated by 4 millennia, builders and a Serbian inventor discovered the same rule. Resonance multiplies small things, and geometry decides who gets invited. Meanwhile, Wardenclyffe's bones, 186 feet up, 300 feet down, iron rods driven like roots, map neatly onto questions we asked at Giza. How do you hold the Earth? How do you touch the sky without tearing it? How do you let the resonator breathe without noise? Tesla solved with timber and steel what the pyramid solved with limestone and granite. He tried to scale it to continents and got punished by practicality and politics. The pyramid kept it local and made it human. Here's a micro story. Imagine Tesla stepping into the king's chamber in 1903, fresh from Shoreham's construction yard, palms calloused from handling conductors the size of trees. He hums once, hears the 121 hertz bloom, and laughs, the quiet kind, almost embarrassed, the laugh of someone who's found an old friend in an unexpected suit. He runs a hand across a granite joint and says under his breath, "High Q, nobody writes it down." The room doesn't need the compliment. Legacy isn't just what survives, it's what repeats. Modern labs now print nanoparticles shaped like tiny pyramids because simulations showed energy concentration under long waves. Engineers chase wireless charging across rooms and struggle with loss and safety. Sound therapists and archaeocausticians drag tone generators into old spaces and come out speaking about pressure with a reverence they can't quantify. All of that is Tesla's shadow and Giza's echo, ambition tempered by mediums that have their own opinions. The lost grid then is less a suppressed machine and more a lost relationship. A way of thinking where power is a conversation, not a conquest. The grid we built is loud and visible, heavy with wires you can count. The grid the plateau hints at is quiet and local, tunable, seasonal, felt in ribs before it's seen in lamps. One is perfect for a city that never sleeps. The other is perfect for a ceremony that has to wait for a certain kind of dawn. What nobody says out loud is that both ask for discipline. Wardenclyffe needed money, trust, and time. Giza needed patience, polish, and a culture willing to treat a room like a teacher. Lose any one of those and the system falls back into stone and scrap. That's the cost of resonance, cooperation, or nothing. Impact shows up in our choices now. We can bulldoze mediums until they behave, or we can learn their timing and take the free gain they offer. Tesla aimed for the planet and missed the budget. The pyramid aimed for a plateau and hit the human nervous system dead on. If we read both honestly, the lesson is simple. Before you reach for more power, ask what the place prefers to do. Build that and the world hums back. Resolution and broader meaning. Maybe the Great Pyramid wasn't a power plant for machines, but a power plant for conditions that changed people. Tesla tried to give the world resonance, Giza taught it. If you want more true stories that live where science, craft, and mystery overlap, subscribe now. And if you're curious how Wardenclyffe's buried iron and Giza's granite heart rhyme, watch the next episode. We're going inside Tesla's notebooks and the tunnels under Shoreham.